Welcome to Stampscaping 101. We sure have a mess here after doing a lot of, I don't know, exercises here, showing how to utilize inks and how to establish a really deep saturated surface here. All right, I just stamped this earlier today, and these are the Distress ink and Mementos, okay, really built up. This is on a, close to matte paper, okay? But these inks, okay, tend to dry very dull, okay? Now, they looked a lot more vibrant when they were freshly applied, okay? Now, don't worry about that if you get this, because it'll happen, except for with Marvy inks, okay? But that being said, if you spray seal this piece, I'm wiping off a bunch of pieces of little paper towel that were stuck everywhere. Okay, you can see a little stained up here and whatnot, but you can revive the vibrancy, the saturation of freshly applied inks by just simply spray sealing it, okay, when you're done. Okay, now that being said, I do want to add kind of a nice, I don't know, kick of saturated tones into this piece. I didn't use any Marvy inks. Let's do that right now, okay? That will really kind of bring everything to life and kind of reestablish the depth and saturation that we're going after here in the end result, okay? Now, adding this in, we don't need to add a lot of this in, okay, to get that. And if you don't have those inks, then just put another layer of what, a lighter tone that you've used before, and then just spray seal it before it dries, okay? Now you can reestablish a lot of the vibrancy whether you add that another coating on there or not, okay? But sometimes it's good to just kind of get it a little bit wet again and then spray seal it before it dries, okay? You don't have to though, but it can help at times. It's really more so if I let something kind of sit for, I don't know, ages, and I finally get around like a month or something like that before I spray seal. I don't know why, but that's what I've found. Not all the times, but sometimes, okay? Alright, so adding this in like so, and one of the things I did was I established these different slopes in here, okay? It feels like there's a different slopes running in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish some shadows at the base of these trees that I've kind of placed in here. I was going to say planted in here, but I've placed in here. Okay. All right. Now, see, I've introduced a kind of a brighter tone of green. Now, I'm going in with a darker green like this, and ooh, that is way too dark, okay? But just blend it out like so, and you'll be absolutely fine, okay? Okay. You see that where I had that big old saturation there, okay? Just kind of spread it around, okay? It just comes to show you that, it's pretty easy to do. You just stay in one area and just blend it out. Don't use a heavy hand. Some people say, oh, I have a heavy hand. If you have a heavy hand, then just use a lighter version of it, or even better, a drier version of it, so you can go on with a really heavy hand and not do any damage, okay? When people say they don't really have a heavy hand. If they were to take, some little bit of makeup and they're applying it to, a 2-year-old's face for, going out on Halloween, they're not going to scrub on, someone's face. But what happens is, with card making, they're heavy-handed because sometimes they apply some ink and they can't see anything because they're applying a very light version of it. So then they go heavy like that because they want it really fast. It's just, I understand that too, we want to be able to see our results, but I'm lighter on it because I know that getting, like say, watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There was 15 strokes there of application on it. It got nice and juicy wet, and it takes like, I don't know, 5 seconds to do that, or I don't know, less, it seemed, okay? I don't know how many strokes per second this is, but you know, you can establish all these shadows like that. And I mean, that doesn't take too much time at all. But we're used to using markers that give us, that exact color of the ink that we're applying instantly. Okay. But I'm just doing this. I'm utilizing all of my inks kind of in their full range of potential values. Okay, so I can use a black, but I can get a 5% gray, 15%, 35% or something like that. I can get all the ranges that it has the potential for. It's like getting thinking of your inks as like one note or something like that, okay? Rather than getting an ink like this and it can be 5 octaves or something like that. I don't know, it's if I'm not a musician or anything like that, but I'm just saying you can get so many different notes out of one ink, okay? Than just the one, okay? And that's what we want. You want to be able to kind of, you want to be able to get a lot of value out of your media and your stamps. These trees in here were stamped in their entirety, but they were also stamped in just various amounts, of their, tops. Very small applications of it and larger applications. And you will become a master of your media, okay? Instead of being bound by, limitations of using it in one way, okay? All right, so applying this, you can see, I'm going darker with it, and it's establishing kind of a greater range of values in here. And we have oscillations of light and dark. And I don't know, it just looks more full than before. Okay, but this scene to me, it's not looking, I wouldn't say realistic. I don't know if any of my scenes look realistic, but there's something kind of storybookish about this piece. Just, I don't know, the hills and the color scheme that's going on in here. It's kind of interesting to me. I guess this is because I was just kind of coming up with a scene on the fly, and I was making do with kind of the arrangement, which wasn't ideal. Okay, so, all right, this is going on really dry right here. And what I was mentioning about just going kind of establishing the moisture content, let's do the same thing here. Let's put on some, dipping this into my walnut stain ink right there. It was, that was going to take forever. So that's where your just re-inkers will go so much faster, okay? See this right here? All right, now in here, I just want to be careful about not applying it where I don't want to apply it, okay? So in this scene right here, I just have this area of lightness right within that space. I might have just colored my cabin a little bit darker than maybe ideal, but that's all right. Okay, so bring this in like that. I feel like I'm buffing something or something like that. Okay. Something like that. All right. Let's match kind of the values of the bottom of the scene with the top. So let's go with a little bit more kind of a deeper brown in this case. Okay. This is a Marby brown. Just use any kind of real dark brown or kind of a chocolate tone or whatnot. Okay. Now what I'm doing here is I just want to make the perimeter of the piece darker so it frames the overall piece off a lot more. And then I want to bring out this lighting within that space. Okay. Now I used some black, like underneath my trees and down in here on the corners. So let's do the same thing up top. It'll bring a lot more continuity to the piece by doing the same thing on the top right and left corners as you do on the bottom left and right corners. You don't have to do this. I mean, you can make, you know, the bottom a lot more heavy on the bottom, but by and large, this little trick here, I think it can improve, I don't know, most of the scenes out there by just doing some kind of framing like this. It's what they do in portrait photography. You know, you can take a picture and, you know, for some publication or, you know, yearbooks, you know, for kids who are in school. You know, there's a darker framing around it, and it just contains everything a lot more, and it draws the attention to the, you know, the focal point of a scene, or in photography to the, you know, the subject matter of the portrait. All right, so this is getting really quite moist. I don't know, it feels like, you know, there's this kind of dampness to the overall paper. It's kind of, I don't know, I really like it when it gets kind of that way. It feels like, it makes me feel like I don't know, it's like you have fabric or something like that, or it's like leather smithing, or I don't know, it feels different to me. You know, paper does when it gets really kind of layered with media. Okay, so let's see. Let's go in and get this cabin a lot more. The cabin's kind of undefined right now, okay, and it really needs some definition in here. So what I'll do is I'll just bring in some kind of light tones. And what I like to do on my cabin here is establish kind of a darker side, vertical walls, okay? Just to bring out more lighting on the rooftop. Okay, now just kind of coloring in like that doesn't really do it for me. So what I do is I kind of go in with a, you know, little bit darker, and then what I do is I blend it a lot more like that. Okay. Now, one of the things I didn't do really well is in my impression, I should have re-inked my black marker. I mean my black pad before I stamped that out, because it stamped out really lightly. So I usually like it a little bit or a lot darker in terms of the impression, but we'll still bring in some definition to it. Okay, like that. It's just kind of this cabin in the background. Okay, it doesn't really blend very well right now, but we'll blend it in more. I'll show you how to do that. So there's all kinds of things that we can always do. That's why I never quit on a scene. I always like to see it through to its completion. Okay, so that means just utilizing different types of techniques along the way, and many in the kind of the end result. Okay, so that's looking really saturated. It's starting to dry. I'm seeing that kind of that kind of a decrease. There's a decrease in the saturation that's starting to happen here. So, like I said, I'll spray this. Maybe when I'm done with this, and I'll show you what it looks like dry, and then I'll just go outside and spray it and bring it back in, so you can see the benefits of that, you know, right at hand. Okay, now I'm trying to think of what I want to stamp in here. It could be a quote, it could be some birds flying by, you know, or something like that. I could put in some additional framing around it with this, like some overhanging leaves or something like that. I don't know, there's just a lot of things you can do still. Okay, but things by and large, none of this looks really crisp, okay? And I like to have some elements of sharpness within the piece. We're getting a little bit down below with the the reeds here, but we need some sharper imagery in here. There's just been so much glazed tones in here, and it can really use some, oh, I don't know, just various subject matter in here. I think that horse looks pretty cool in there. It's just sitting here, so let's do that. I was thinking about a deer, but I think that horse will look pretty cool. Little thing with the horse, if it's standing in grass, wipe off the bottom of the feet, okay? However much you wipe it off, that means that that grass is that deep right there, okay? You stamp it up right up here in the distance, it's going to represent something that's like a horse that's probably bigger than the rooftop, If you stamp it down here, that's a long ways to go. You could stamp it down here, but I'm going to stamp it a little bit higher up so that, I don't know, in perspective, it'll represent kind of how tall these trees are by relationship, okay? Okay. Let's look at that horse right here, eating at the grass, okay? So that's a sharp image right there, all right? And let's bring in, you've seen me use this kind of tiny rock stamp a lot. I use it a lot on dirt surfaces, but I really like it in grassy areas as well. You see rocks out in the grass sometime. I'm not going to put as many applications of it like I do, like on a dirt gravel road or something like that. But you see those little elements in there. See what we're doing from a textural standpoint, okay? So it's not so kind of monotonous in terms of the, that modeling of color. When you add a lot of inks, like you did, I did on here, and then I don't know, I stamped at my sedge fill and I stamped over that, or colored over that. It's looking a little bit muddy, okay? Now, I do get a lot of muddy looking scenes all the time, okay? You wouldn't, I don't know, you might not think about it, or think that of me, but nevertheless, I get that all the time in my pieces. And the reason why is because, I think I'm going to stamp this one, but I think I want to do some other things in here first. It's because I just add things at the end to contrast against kind of a real muddled looking area. So I'll put in things like, my white paint pen, which is nice and crisp, so that it contrasts and, I don't know, it brings a little harmony to the piece by adding those contrasting textures. Okay, so I think this, I see some lighting in here. I just did my light rays, and I think this could use some in here. Let's go ahead and do it, okay? All right, I'm going to create some lighting up here, and it's going to be coming into the piece like this, okay? So, okay, you just have to kind of designate some area in your piece that you want your lighting to emanate from. I'm going to do it from up here, and we'll use some white pigment ink, okay? I changed my mind. I was going to do it from dead center. I'm going to do it from over here, coming across this way. With kind of your more matte styles of paper, okay, which this one is a little bit more of. You kind of have to be a little bit careful about your application of this type of effect. And that's because On matte paper, on glossy paper, you can just wipe it off if you don't like it. Okay. On matte, it kind of sticks to it, especially in the Brilliance pads. Okay. With that being said, you can use a different brand that's not applying so permanently and drying so fast. Just to get a better kind of handle on it. I'm just going to use the Brilliance though. Okay, now see that beam right there? That beam is not really too defined, so you just go back in and just add more ink to it. Okay, let's go here. My white pad is kind of dry. I thought I re-inked it though, but it could use a little bit more. My white and black pigment inks tend to be used pretty fast. Okay, I came up here. Let's wipe that off right there. I came up a little bit too much into that cloud. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Now this is coming out in front of everything, okay, but I'm going to put, like it won't be very apparent, but I'll put a beam behind the cabin. It's like white on very light area, so you're not going to be able to see it very much. Okay, it's right there, going behind it. Let's do this. Let's do a real narrow beam, kind of coming through here, but let's have it going behind this tree instead of in front of it. Okay, kind of. I'm not going to mask off the tree or something like that. It's just going to be too much work. I wouldn't want to do that even if I could. But I'll just have it go up to it, and it'll kind of disappear. And I'll put a little bit of ink behind it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, something like that. So it's, ooh, that looks pretty good. I don't know, I might want to have one come across there. Dare I do that, or I can have it coming down here. Okay, let's do this right here. I'll tell you what though, I'll go like this. I'll break it up a little bit. The beam will kind of be broken, meaning it's not one continuous line, okay? So have some space in there like that, and then you can have a beam, but it's not quite so, explosive an image, and the beams are kind of images. Or you can call it statement, lighting statement. Okay. All right, so see that right there? So it kind of breaks up light, sometime. And I think that those types of beams are really effective like that. Okay, now what I was saying is, I'll go back in here, I'll kind of clean up some things. So let's just go with the same white here, and then I'll apply it on some of these clouds where the lighting is coming from, okay? It stands to reason that they would be kind of lighter in that area right in here. When I stamped up my cloud, it was supposed to be brown, and it was like, oh my gosh, there was a ton of blue on it, from a previous scene. And I didn't clean it off, so it just stamped out bluer. But I mean, I think it looks fine. But I am going to subdue a little bluish tone in here by applying some of this white right over the top of it, so you can kind of you can kind of remedy things at this point in time with doing stuff like this, and I do it all the time. Okay, things aren't always like exactly, as I think they should be looking, or not that. Things aren't always looking like I hope they will be looking in the end result, when I'm kind of midway through. So I just kind of add these types of effects in the end, okay? And then it just brings everything together. All right. There's a lot of lighting in there, okay? Maybe that's, I don't know, that could be a little bit more than I'd want. So I just took a dry paper towel, and let's, we'll blend that in a little bit more, like this, okay? And that removes a little bit. I don't want to remove it too much, though, like some, but sometimes it's a little bit too much, okay? This white is really standing out in here because I didn't retain very much white of the paper, okay? So if I retain some of the white of the paper, we're representing kind of a white light shining on things. That's what, I have this, I don't have like 5, different values of white, like a warm white or whatever, so I just have to use kind of the stark white that I have. And the stark white is going to be the white of the paper, okay? So let's see how this looks in some other areas here as well, just to kind of bring some illumination into the meadow area as well. I'm not going to put it in the darker areas, but I'll put it in some of the the lighter areas just to kind of bring it to life a little bit. Like there's some lighting kind of illuminating, areas on the meadow. Okay, kind of putting some of these trees in, some of that lighting as well. All right, I think that is about right. Now I've taken some area things in here and I've put crisp impressions in here, the horse. The beams are kind of crisp, but they're also diffused, right? So I've made some areas in here look even softer than some of the kind of soft, muddled, colored areas, okay? So we're playing around with those textural changes again in here. And that's adding to the overall, look of the piece. Let's go in now and let's add some additional crisp imagery. Let's go ahead and use Versifying Black. I don't get to use that all the time when I'm working on certain types of surfaces because the Versifying won't dry like on foils or does it dry on glossy cardstock? I can't remember. I think it didn't. It sat for like, I don't know, like weeks and it was like still kind of bleeding, out. I think. I'm not sure. But the Versifying is an oil-based ink, okay? So sometimes you stamp it out in certain types of papers and, you have it sit and there's like this oil kind of ring, sometimes. So, just kind of play around with it, see what works and what doesn't. Okay, overhanging tree limbs, okay? these are going to be, of course, very crisp. And I'm doing them in the VersaFine Clear because it is so dark. And, I don't know, it gives you exquisite, you know, impressions, in my opinion. Especially if you have, like, really detailed stamps, where something like that really showcases the ink's abilities in terms of creating your nice, deep, rich values. All right, see that right there? Having something nice and crisp. Look how dimensional that looks too. I don't know, having oil-based inks right over the dye-based inks like that. All right. Let's go with, okay. Now, Amari Black ink is pretty dark, all right? Here. And that's what's been used down on the corners here. So I get that focused in okay. But let's put some additional impressions in those same areas with the VersaFine Clair, okay? And I'll show you. I'm going to change the angle a little bit more from the other impressions that I made, okay? Yeah, that one came a little bit close. But you can just, here, I'll show you from the left and right, okay? So this is the Clair right there. And this is the Marvy Black. So you can play them with each other, and doesn't it look like a little bit deeper in terms of the space in there? You have the darker ones with dark too, but they're just set back further, so it looks like this. There's a fuller kind of a cluster of grass reeds in there. Okay. All right. So see that how that bottom part right there kind of balances out that top part. In terms of the values of it, and I don't know, the textural crisp element right in that space. And I think I'm going to do this old man kind of and dog stamp. All right. Wipe off the bottom of this just a touch. I'll leave their shadows on. They won't be walking in like too tall of a grass right there, but okay. So I'm stamping them lower on the horizon because it's a larger scale image, okay? So you have it lower representing something closer to us. All right, so there you have that. It's kind of creating a visual dialogue, that, and then reads, and it kind of goes around like that, kind of in a circular type of visual, I don't know, path, you might say. Every piece you do, I mean, you're kind of creating this visual path for people. That's why a lot of, see, like in here, I left a little bit of an opening, for the viewer to enter the scene. Okay, let's go in now, and let's add in some additional highlights into the piece. These are just some Artistro paint pens, and this is kind of roughly the color scheme that's working down here. I mean, we have some other colors as well that we could use. I don't know if I'll go too crazy with this. It could bring it alive in many different ways. Here's a fairly kind of a beige color. All right. And I'll just add these down. I need to be careful that I don't touch the Clair because it's really quite wet still. but we'll just add some of these sparkly little elements. This is a kind of, like I said, it's like cream or something like that. So I'll add it. I'll start adding it in the areas where that kind of that's a similar lighting has remained, okay? So I'm not doing this like in the darker areas, okay? This is like little sparkly lights that are kind of reflecting the lighting that's in that area. In this case, in the these little meadow or little slopey area. Okay, I think I just put my finger in some part of the glare. I could heat set the glare, and it would probably dry fairly quickly. But I don't want to do that right now. Okay, so hang that down. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. There's little specks in here, okay? It just represents lighting when you're looking at it at arm's distance. It doesn't really stand out, strongly or anything like that, which I don't want. I want it to harmonize. Now, sometimes I want things to stand out, yeah, but not in this case. Okay. I'm trying to find an access point to get in here without touching the wet VersaVine. I don't know. Maybe I should wait and did the VersaVine last, so I can just let it dry. Okay, adding some of this onto my rooftop. I'm just going right along the line of the some of the shingles on top of the cabinet fence. I've really lost the fence in this cabin with fence scene. Okay, so let's try to reestablish some of that here. It's really quite dark in there, so I don't want to go too kind of crazy with it. I'm not going in here with a very steady hand. It's because my hand, I need to get in here like this, but then I'd put my hand right on top of that image there, so I'm really having to kind of extend here. Okay, so I'm just drawing in that little fence right in here. Okay, kind of stands out a little bit, but who cares? So there's that fence right in there. Okay, but this is kind of it at arm's distance. All right. So, I don't know, that fence is kind of standing out, so let's put a few little highlights in here. Look on my meadow. Here's white. I don't know. Let's go ahead and put some white on a couple little areas. Let's have some of these clouds reflecting some of that lighting. Some of these clouds above the light source are being bottomlit, so you put little highlights on the bottom portion of it. Okay. Some of these trees kind of facing light. I'll put some little lighting illumination. It's called specular light. It's kind of light that's brighter than white. It's like a little reflective type of element. Now this white is really standing out, so I'm not going to add too many of them, okay? But you can see it where I've just hit it on some of the left side of these trees. Now this, it's starting to be like the lighting is above it, so if I wanted to put a dot on the, I'd put it, on the top of it, like that. So see, the more you go over here, to the right of it, the highlights become much more left side illuminated. Okay, and that's the difference, between this, this trees over here would be, illumination would be on the opposite side of them. Well, these are really standing out, so, I mean, on some of these trees it might be one dot or something like that if you wanted to do that. Some trees behind the cabin. They can have some of it too. All right. So there you have it there. See this? You know what I mean? It's like two dots right there. Or here's one dot on that entire tree. And see that right there? See that illumination? So over here it's really dark, so you don't put a lot of lighting on it because what you're, this little lighting represents reflected light. Okay, now that being said, I'm going to do, maybe I like to add like a little wildflowers in here. Now these little dots in here represent kind of a reflected light, not necessarily flowers, but I think I'm going to add these little clusters of white. Okay, so it's like white wildflowers, like pearly everlasting or something. I don't know. Whatever. It's just kind of a nice texture on the this area. Maybe it's clover or something like that. See this right here? See, we're adding these little crisp little elements in here. So it's not like this muddled area of, all those saturated tones. So we get the tones in there. The tones are great, but not just as the only thing in there. So what you do is you kind of pair those, with some crisp elements, and the two of them together are perfect, but kind of apart from one another. They might be kind of lacking something, from a visual sense. I'm tempted to go into that cabin there and kind of give it an interior illumination with white. No, let's go ahead and do it. The window has one of those little grid patterns on it. So right there. So it's kind of illuminated from the inside. I don't know, it might be a little bit too much. I'm not sure if I like that. Maybe not. It's a little bit too bright. I mean, I could put some little lighting underneath it. Maybe it shouldn't be lit too. The guy's just getting home. So let me kind of damper that. Okay. The acrylic ink on this matte paper really dries fast. Let's do that. Let's go in. Ooh, that's a little bit too bright. Let's go in. Maybe a little bit of a dim tone in there might be okay. I'm going to just take it out. So I just kind of drew it back in with, your alcohol pens. So there you have it. The light turned on, then it turned off. All right, so I think that is about it there. Look at that depth. I really like that area in the sky. Look at that blue cloud. I think the blue cloud, that bluish brown looks pretty cool. Otherwise, it would have been all the same color, which I think would look fine too, but just having that blue in there is kind of neat. It's kind of like a bluish gray, huh? All right, so you can follow their path there and up. The light beams really added a lot, didn't they? Okay, so anyways, we'll take this out and spray seal. I don't want to spray seal now because the ink right here is really wet, okay? And it's an oil-based ink, so if I spray seal with like an acrylic spray, it could make that bleed and run, okay? So that being said, even if this is dry, if you put too heavy a coating on right away, it could bleed somewhat. So what you do is you just lightly spray something, okay? You're hitting it from like 12 inches away. You're not trying to, put a big glob on there. It's almost invisible. Let it dry for, a minute or two. Then hit it again and give a light coating. And then what you do is you kind of create this dried, sealed surface. And then you can hit it with a little bit of a kind of heavier coat. And that should do it. Okay, so anyway, let's see. Fun stuff with kind of textural changes and whatnot on here. And I think that finished off the piece really nice. I got a piece out of the, kind of an exercise piece that I wasn't really expecting to do, but I don't know. I get in these videos and I can't help but kind of finish them off, or, stamp a scene on it or something like that. And then if I have that sitting around, it really kind of gets into me. I really want to go back and finish it, and see what can happen from it. Wasn't expecting to do those rays, so that's kind of a, I don't know, there's a little bit of a different look to this one than some of the other scenes where I've added some rays in there like that. But I think they really helped. It gave a lot of dimension and depth to the piece. And I did think that my cabin, it was just, I should have inked up my pad before I stamped that out, because it stamped out really light. So this was kind of a weak area in here, okay? Even though it's somewhat of an establishing focal point, we look at that cabin, but it was so light in value and it looked really back in the distance. So what you do, I'm not covering it up with something, but I am putting something that's supposed to be in front of that cabin, right? These rays are kind of coming out towards us. So it pushes it back into the distance, and then by doing something like these right here, these are even in front of the beams here. So that pushes that back even farther visually. It's all, two-dimensional, and it's all on the same slope, but visually here, doesn't it look like it's way back in the distance? So you're pushing it back like that by having other elements that are closer to us, even though they're not covering that element, but they're just visually in front of it, okay? And even this, like this guy right here and this guy, detracts from that area right in there. I don't know, maybe even the little highlights in here do, or something like that. But that background cabin now is something that's very, very, secondary or whatever to the many other elements within the piece. In terms of, I don't know, both value, vibrancy, saturation, depth, and definitely interest, okay? But, with it being in there like that, it's not competing for attention with all these other elements, so it's the perfect complement now, too. Okay, so anyways, fun with that, and thanks so much for watching the video.